the Biden administration itself estimates that battery electric cars will make up less than 10% of total U.S. automobile stock by 2050. The scenario for the entire world is that less than 1/5 of all global cars will be battery electric by 2050. We should remember as well that we simply do not yet have electric tractors or heavy trucks or airplanes or ships. And that means that all the fossil fuel infrastructure that allows such machinery to operate will have to stay intact for our supply chains to continue their current necessary operations. And our turbocharge on electric cars will produce very little impact on the climate. The International Energy Agency estimates that the world would produce 235 million fewer tons of carbon dioxide if we achieve all our ambitious stated transport electrification targets in this decade. The reduction will lower global temperatures by 1/10,000th of a degree Celsius by the end of the century, according to the UN's own climate panel's model.
Tackling climate change with current technology is essentially impossible. This means that climate policymakers tinker at the margins, offering deceptive solutions and moral grandstanding. This pattern has been repeated for 3 decades. Most of the promises made in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 and Kyoto in 1997 were disregarded. A 2018 study found that only 17 of the 157 countries that pledged emission cuts in the Paris Agreement passed laws mandating the required action. Which nations? Algeria, Canada, Costa Rica, Ethiopia, Guatemala, Indonesia, Japan, North Macedonia, Malaysia, Mexico, Montenegro, Norway, Papua New Guinea, Peru, Samoa, Singapore, and Tonga. These are not the nations that will change global emissions. Even if every country did everything promised in the original Paris Agreement, the emission cuts by 2030 would constitute just 1% of what is necessary to keep temperatures rising under the 2-degree target.
Failure, however, has not made politicians or the people they serve more careful or more adamant about searching for better solutions. Instead, we have doubled down, making ever more ludicrous but emotionally attractive pledges, despite zero chance of either their implementation or their success if implemented, attempting to put forward the much heralded and oft-trumpeted vision of a zero carbon dioxide emission world, whether by 2035 or 2050, would be so ruinously expensive that extensive Gilets Jaunes-style riots, the kind we saw in Paris, are certain long before the goal is reached.
The New Zealand government promised carbon neutrality by 2050. They then commissioned a report to estimate the cost of doing so, a sequence of affairs that should perhaps have been reversed. The results, even if implemented efficiently, the cost by 2050 will be 16% of total annual gross domestic product, a figure higher than that of the entire current annual national budget. And that cost will be incurred every year. That's nothing but a pathway to less prosperity. Treading down such a pathway will produce a host of secondary consequences, including serious civil unrest, that will not be in the least beneficial to climate. The renowned scientific journal Nature recently published a study indicating that getting 80% of the way to Biden's promised climate utopia by mid-century would cost every American more than $5,000 per year. The same Americans who are willing to pay only a fraction of that, about $77 per year, according to research published by the Yale for Climate Change Communication in the Journal of Environmental Research. Getting to 100% would more than double that cost. It's no surprise that hypothetically green-minded politicians evince little enthusiasm for investigating the true cost of their preposterous self-serving policies. If we do care about fixing this challenge, we need to change course. Pretending that the formal technological answer currently exists and it's not being implemented because we lack conviction and willpower is reckless and misleading. Worse, it stops us from pursuing real solutions to the many problems that confront us. Only one of them is climate change. Dozens of the world's top climate economists and 3 Nobel laureates in economics recently evaluated a whole gamut of climate solutions with think tank Open Consensus. cutting CO2 output from the rich and already efficient producing EU isn't practically expensive, and partly because the EU climate policies are much more inefficient than necessary. The EU prefers to use solar and wind, for example, to cut a ton of CO2 over the more efficient option of switching from coal to natural gas. The Nobel laureates and climate economists instead determined that investment in green energy innovation comprised the best long-term investment. Why? Consider how the world worried over starvation in the 1960s and 70s. If we'd approached that problem like we're approaching climate remediation, we would have required the rich to eat less while serving their leftovers to the poor. That would have failed, as our current approaches will fail disastrously. What worked instead? The Green Revolution, the innovative development of high-yielding crops. We thereby increased world grain production by 250% between 1950 and 1984, raising the calorie intake of the world's poorest people and reducing the incidence of serious famines.